Oh, that's so frustrating, right? When an interface changes, users hate that.
Exactly. Even if it looks better and it works better, the initial reaction is, I hate this. And
So, Andy, how did you break into UX?
like most people that have been in it 20 plus years, kind of by accident and self-learning, but also with a design background. So my initial degree was in graphic design. It was digital graphic design. After a couple of jobs, the Anthrax job that I mentioned, I went back to teach. And the first campus that I was able to teach at was so far from my house that I would have to go there in the morning, and I would teach day and night classes. So I teach the morning class that would end around 1 o'clock. The night class would start around 5 or 5:30, but it was an hour and a half each way from my house. So it didn't make sense to go home and then drop my stuff off, look at TV for a half hour, and then drive back. So, all right, I'm going to stay here. And while that was happening, this was probably 2002-ish, 2003-ish, all of these emerging disciplines were coming, like interaction design, information architecture, content strategy. I was like, these are interesting. These are a little bit different than just teaching the class photo manipulation or page layout skills or web design skills. So I started to read about them and I started to, okay, if I can learn this for myself, how do I apply it to my students? How do I apply it to my learnings and help them learn? And the thing that I actually learned through all of that is you really learn something when you have to teach it, because the questions people ask, show me this, do this, you have to know it well enough to be able to not just teach someone it, but answer any question about it. So I started to add it to lessons and projects and get really good at it. And after a few years of teaching it, I was like, wow, I'm teaching this and I know it well, but I'm not going out and applying it myself. So I decided to stop teaching and go back into the field and actually start applying it. So self-taught up until that point, and then eventually I went back and got my master's degree in user experience design because I wanted to have the foundational knowledge of the core principles that maybe you don't always learn when you pick them up yourself, to have intelligent enough conversations around them to be able to convince people the way you articulate your design decisions in a way that sounds more rigorous and scientific than just opinion. So that's my journey.
Cool. Yeah, I have a similar journey with a journalism design background. So you touched upon something I want to revisit, and that is the foundations of graphic design. And you also said how you went back to grad school to get some of the UX foundations. How do you feel about the importance of those foundations?
Really important, right? I think that without having core principles, without really understanding best practices and the why behind them, then everything else becomes a little bit subjective and subject to a lot of current trends. And I think when you think of true great interfaces, great experiences, they're grounded in those principles, from even the graphic design ones like typography and the way that that flows in a design system to make sense. So it doesn't look like there's 12 different size fonts on the same screen that can confuse people that are using it, or just application of color, but then to core interaction principles and how people behave and how to meet their mental models. We all try really hard to change the way people behave. There are just core ways that people do things that you have to build upon. You can't expect to have someone do something completely different than their mind works or than they ever have before and expect that to be successful. You can teach them how to modify certain behaviors and get used to certain things and apply those psychological principles to help them achieve a desired outcome. But if you don't know what they are, it's a lot of guesswork. A lot of what we do is hypothesis driven, and we try to validate those. And half of the time, or more than half of the time, if we're doing a good job, we're actually wrong. But then we understand what the right thing is from learning those lessons. So without those, you just introduce more risk, and it puts more time and involvement in the discovery and keep learning and learning, and you never get anything that ships because you're actually recreating every time, and it takes so much time to go back. And then the people that are using your product are, wait, this was here last week and now I have to do it this way this time, and oh wait, it used to work like that. It's just too much for them.
For sure. Oh, that's so frustrating, right? When an interface changes, users hate that.
Exactly. Even if it looks better and it works better, the initial reaction is, I hate this. until they spend a little bit of time with it and get to use it.
Check out all my interviews with industry leaders on BlatzChatz.